Senator Brown.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. I join colleague Senator Ludlam in opposing this legislation, and I might take up the point of Senator Minchin's very sharp and well-delivered speech preceding me, where at the end he said, in advocating this bill pass expeditiously, imagine how long it's going to take to build a nuclear power station after the length of time it's taken to establish a nuclear waste dump. And therein lies an enunciation of the fear that so many people have about a nuclear waste dump being put in the desert, as Senator Minchin puts it, in this ecosystem in the Northern Territory, because it isn't as innocent as it looks in being a proposal simply to put low-level waste from medical facilities or whatever into a place out of range of most city dwellers, but nevertheless on the land of Indigenous people in Central Australia, against the wishes of people involved in the region that's being targeted by this legislation. What Senator Minchin has clearly outlined is a proposal that in future this waste dump will also be the repository for waste coming from the proliferation of nuclear power stations in Australia. And we don't have to have long memories to go back to the Howard proposal in the run to the 2007 election that there be up to 25 nuclear power stations around Australia. They have to be for grid reasons and because they're cooled by water, for water reasons, close to the existing major population centres of Australia. It is very much alive and on the agenda of the alternative government of this country that nuclear power stations are coming down the line, despite what we've seen unfold in Japan in recent months. It is as if there's an inability to grasp the threat to humanity of the whole nuclear power cycle on the benches opposite. And I want to talk about that for a moment because I had a former Prime Minister approach me recently proposing that Australia become a nuclear waste dump for the whole world, and the money coming from such a nuclear waste dump to be put to environmental purposes. And I said, well, Bob, how can that be? The environmental threat of nuclear power stations, of a nuclear waste dump feeding a nuclear industry in the state, on the planet, far outrides any monetary advantage that might be put into the environment itself. But let's make no mistake, Muckaty Station is not just targeted for low-level or even medium-level nuclear waste dump proposal as in this legislation, but it is inevitably targeted to become not just the Australian repository of waste from a nuclear industry which has huge plans afoot for nuclear power stations in this country, but at highest levels of corporate thinking is the proposal that this waste dump become a global nuclear waste dump. And A leads to B leads to C. And you cannot see this legislation divorced from that intent. And Senator Minchin, of course, has just given a clear indicator of how live and prospective these proposals are. Senator Ludlam has done an enormous amount of work in evaluating this proposal and has outlined the more specific and local reasons for not going ahead with it. But I can just comment on Senator Minchin's condemnation of the South Australian government for opposing North East South Australia being a site for a nuclear waste dump, and add this: every reason that the Rand government gave for opposing a nuclear power station, a nuclear waste dump in North East South Australia applies to this proposal in the Northern Territory. It's simply a case of the Commonwealth having the power over the territory that it doesn't have in overriding a state interest. What is good enough for South Australia is good enough for the Northern Territory, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker.